writing memoir. And my guess is that by now you have several different stories from your life that you've written. So today, let's think a little bit about revision and how we can be intentional with our revision choices. We've been following the writing process this year. And so for a while with your memoir, I know that you've been planning, making some storyboards and collecting in your notebooks and planning other memoirs. And then you've been writing your best first draft. It's time to select a memoir to take towards publication. Now, instead of just stepping through each of these, I'd like us to slow down a little bit and really be intentional about our revision. Where are you going to put your energy for revision? As memoirists, we've been thinking about breaking the memory into scenes, thinking of a lesson that goes below the surface, and to craft well. So as we're considering where to be intentional about revision, it makes sense to return to these three ideas. So the question really is, where are you going to put your energy for revision? It can be in one of these areas: scenes, lesson, or craft. It's not about just revising because you're supposed to revise, but actually choosing a place to put your energy so that your memoir becomes more powerful. In order to help you, we've created a revision reflection for you to use today as a writer. Let's check it out. Now, we designed the revision reflection to be like a checklist. So you can go through and kind of think about these areas, scenes, lesson, and craft, to determine where you should spend your energy for revision. So I'd like to briefly show you how you'll use this writing checklist. The first one says, draw a box around each of your scenes. And so we've been working with storyboard, and so you'll draw a box around each scene. Look at your storyboard and draw a box on your draft to show where the scene is. So here's my first scene about leaving the house to run to the frog pond, and here it is on my draft. So when you draw boxes around all of your scenes, you might notice some things. First of all, perhaps you'll notice that the order isn't working. Or maybe you forgot to write a scene and so it doesn't make sense in your draft. Maybe you'll notice that it's not clear, that there's some jumps between scenes, and so you need to add a little telling between the scenes in order to make your story make sense. Or more than likely what you're going to notice is that one of your scenes are a lot shorter than the rest of your scenes. Often what happens is that we are writing and our first scenes are really long and developed, and then the end isn't. In fact, sometimes the most important scenes are scenes that we've only written one or two sentences for. So you might decide to stretch some of the important scenes in your memoir. We've spent some time thinking and doing a lot of talking about the lesson learned and making sure that it's meaningful and goes below the surface. The thing is maybe you haven't actually written that in your memoir. And so the next thing on the checklist asks you to circle the lesson learned and answer the following questions. Here's Parker, whose story was about this fight that he had with his sisters and how he threw a stick and one of his sisters got hurt. Remember from Parker that the difference between a first lesson and a universal lesson.
We had to rush her to MedStat because her eye was cut right here. And I felt so bad. And my first lesson was to never throw sticks. But the universal lesson is actually just let your anger go.
So you'll want to check that you have a universal lesson like Parker and that it's written on your draft. The last three things on the checklist are all about crafting well. They're things that we've been talking about and that you've checked your drafts for in the past. And so pay attention to the things that you're doing well and maybe the places that you could revise. I've met a lot of kids who say they don't like to revise. But as a writer, revision is my favorite part of the process. I like to think through my draft and thinking, how can I make it more powerful? So just like me, take your revision checklist and actually check off the parts. Answer the questions with the different colors, like I colored move is red, talk is blue. And take some time to think through this. What you're going to notice is your strengths as a writer, as well as the places where maybe if you'd spend some more energy, your memoir would become more powerful. This is important work. The last two questions are about your strengths and where you're going to put energy for revision. Once you've decided, add your name to the chart in your classroom. Make the revisions, and if you have time, you can always revise in another place too. Just put your name up for a second time. Happy writing, everyone.